Lizard Rock or Patyegarang? Where does justice lie? What's in a name? Lizard Rock was applied by whitefellas to an unusual rock exposed in roadworks that has been enhanced with a gross set of painted teeth. Patyegarang is the preferred name for an urban development proposal presented by the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, or Metro for short. Patyegarang was the teenage companion of 1st Fleet Marine Lieutenant William Dawes, who provided him with most of the words and grammar that eventually became the core of the Sydney Aboriginal language as it is now known. Dawes and Patyegarang's relationship was close. Celebrated as a love story in Bangarra Dance Theatre's performance at the Opera House, it also inspired a novel by Kate Grenville. They deserve acknowledgement for their cultural contributions, but neither of them had any connection to the land that's now in dispute. Despite numerous web entries claiming otherwise, we have no confirmed image of Patyegarang, and we are not even sure of her alleged Gamaragal tribal affiliation. Patyegarang's name still conjures conflict. In 2020, the City of Sydney deferred a motion to commission a statue of her and Lieutenant Dawes at Dawes Point. It would have been very appropriate and the first public statue of an Aboriginal person in Sydney. But Council failed to adequately consult the Aboriginal community. 232 years later, we still get it wrong. Under the Aboriginal Land Rights Act, Metro successfully claimed this 71 hectares for development, plus another 263 hectares adjoining Garagal National Park, which includes the important Moon Rock Aboriginal Place. This was all Crown land in which the state had no interest. We had the chance to add it to the National Parks and Wildlife Estate, but didn't. So why do we now have an expectation that Metro would identify its conservation values as the most appropriate use, when their objective is to lift the living standards of their people? The Land Rights Act was set up to enable Aboriginal groups to make land claims by way of compensation for past theft. But there's a serious double standard here. If we think that urban development is wrong and that national park extension is needed, then the government should never have let it go, or should now buy it back, or do a land swap where Metro can then proceed to a high return development. It wasn't in fact unused land. Timber had been cut, tracks pushed through, several long lines of clay and ochre quarrying had been undertaken, sand and soil was removed from creek junctions, patches were cleared, and today some of it is a shambles of illegal mountain bike and BMX tracks. There are numerous igneous dikes intruding the Hawkesbury sandstone in this area. All are deeply altered to fine, white kaolin clay with a margin of iron oxides against the sandstone walls. The clay was used in making refractories, quality ceramics, and as an inert filler in manufacturing. The ochre was sold as a pigment, and both were easily excavated. Much of the clay was sold to a firebrick manufacturer, Woodall Duckham, Australasia Proprietary Limited of French's Forest. Reports by the Mines Department Inspector provide some details of production and the names of operators. Excavation was sporadic, with individuals removing clay to meet the market. Operations were poorly conducted, comments about safety were frequent, and some operators stepped outside the law. Threats of prosecution had little effect. One operator caused the inspector considerable angst. "I have at no time found a person more difficult to deal with than X. When this person is not stealing material off Crown and private land, he is mining areas over which he has lodged applications for mining leases, and it appears that the activities of X have had a considerable bearing on Council's antagonism toward mining." There were few requirements about restoring the land after mining, and most disturbed sites were simply abandoned. Some pits flooded, and a child was drowned in one in a little more than 1 metre of water. Despite all that attention, the vegetation on the development area is reasonable, and the fauna which has survived, the usual dog, fox, cat predation, is still present. This land does have good biodiversity values, and it is a difficult site to develop. as there are fire risks and catchment issues, but these could be addressed. The proposal has been slowly moving through the planning process, with 98% of submissions objecting to it. But the process is standing up, and government approval or rejection is imminent. Where is the final determination? Is the Rural Forest Service still holding it up? Or has the arrival of Dr. Sophie Scobbs in Parliament hobbled it? Her suggestion is to make it an Aboriginal-owned national park. Not a new idea, and one that sounds good, but how do they make $1 out of that? The very extensive Aboriginal land adjacent to Garigal National Park is managed for conservation and heritage. Is this not enough? A leaseback arrangement for the Patyegarang block could work, but the returns would be so low they probably wouldn't cover Metro's planning costs. And another matter. Metro has used the media to aggressively criticise Aboriginal people who live and operate in the Northern Beaches and who have objected to the development, on the grounds that their claimed Aboriginality is fraudulent. Playing personal politics at this level is potentially defamatory and should not be part of the planning process. We pinched this land in the first place. Local cowboys tore out the timber, soil and clay. Recreational bikers then shredded it with illegal trails. Then we decided it was useless, opening the way for a land claim. That claim was successful, but now the community wants to say, no, you can't do anything with it because it has a higher natural value. Where is Solomon when you need him? Indications are that the development will be approved and announced at some strange time when we all miss it. Approval will come with a heap of onerous conditions, which will be a fair decision, but not a good outcome. The simple truth is that governments over time have been inept. They legislate all sorts of crazy rules that compete with existing positions, and they never really put environment or social equity in their proper places. It is a challenge to tell this story in an unloaded, unbiased way, and it is likely that many will not agree. But we owe a duty of truth here that will hopefully make a few people think.